Hi guys, so today I just want to talk about an experience that I recently had. Um, just as a disclaimer now, this isn't like advice on what to do if you were in that situation. This is just more me talking about what happened and a couple of things that I have learned from that fact. So basically, I work for a small business, and in coming in on Thursday, I was coming in to take over for the afternoon shift, and my colleague pulled me aside and said, "Oh, Richard, I think we've fucked something up here. I think I've done something wrong." I sort of went, "Okay, what?" And got them to explain, and they told me that they opened up a certain fake email from FedEx and opened an attachment. And it just so happens to be that that attachment installed ransomware on our main server. So that had a number of knock-on effects. Number one, we used one of the business's sort of functions. It involves a lot of images. We need those on a day-to-day basis. Without those images, it's very difficult for the business to run, and those obviously were all encrypted. In case you don't know what ransomware is, ransomware encrypts all the data on a computer. It then demands that you make a payment in exchange for the decryption key to get your files back. It's very nasty, obviously, because it means that you can't you can't access anything that's a sort of a standard document type. You can still use programs, for example, so you'd still be able to use Word or Excel or whatever, but anything that was on it at the time, you wouldn't be able to deal with. Now, beyond that, we have problems because we use a sort of a bespoke software in this line of business, and it's a very temperamental piece of shit, quite frankly. And this took it offline. It just couldn't function, which made continuing the day-to-day work for the clinic quite difficult. Now, I know a fair bit about IT, but this is something that I only in passing know about. I know that ransomware exists, and that you know what to do. So the first thing I sort of went is, okay, so I first put the PC into safe mode with networking, and I started doing some research. So I tried to find out, if I could find out exactly what ransomware is via the kind of attack is, and I found out this was clearly ransomware, that this wasn't, a hoax ransomware application or something like that was trying to trick us. But I was pretty confident of that anyway, because our hard drive was fucked, basically, and nothing was working as it should. So upon sort of working around this and trying to figure out what was going on, I confirmed that this FedEx was a known sort of ransomware scam, and it even said in the article that it was this particular sort of ransomware attack was quite famous for being launched at small businesses because, as you can imagine, with this kind of thing, small businesses are more likely to pay because they need it to function. They need their files and whatever to function. If it's just a couple of pictures for a regular user, they might not. They might just say, "Fuck it," I'm not going to pay because it might not be worth the £600 or £1,000 or whatever. But in this case, after looking at that, my boss had already got the IT guy on the phone, but it was kind of being just left to me to sort of fix it. The IT guy spoke to, he confirmed that I was correct in that this was ransomware, which was obviously pretty obvious that anyone could have established that. And then he basically just told me that he had no idea what to do. He's never had to deal with this. He was more just looking at trying to set up a computer in its place, which wouldn't have worked because we wouldn't be able to access the functionality of the computer system. We still wouldn't be able to use the images and things like that. And whilst the clinic takes backups on sort of a regular basis, they back up the database. They don't back up all those images and all things like that, which are, again, vitally important. So what I set about then doing is trying to work out what ransomware was, and eventually I managed to find out based on the the file ending to the encrypted files, and then downloading a decryptor. And I got quite lucky because it turns out that fairly recently a company called Emisoft had released a free decryptor for this ransomware, which I found out was called Nemucod. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but Nemucod or something like that. So I got that. Then the second problem came up of that to make the decryptor work, you need to show it a encrypted file and an unencrypted file. To do that, luckily we had some old backups of some of the X-rays and things like that, of some of the images, and after doing this, we finding one that was both encrypted on one side and the other side, we were able to make it work. And that's one of the first things I learned, is that when you're coming to using decryptions and things like that, Word files, for example, are completely useless, because if you have an old backup of a Word file, it's entirely possible that on your new version of it, someone's going to press space somewhere along the line, and then it's going to be a completely different file in terms of its coding on a base level of the thing that's being encrypted. It's going to be completely different. So yeah, something like an image file is going to work best when it comes to looking for something like that. But that's pretty obvious because when you transfer it over, it's still going to stay inherently the same. It's not something that's likely to have been edited or anything like that in transit. One thing else is that I also embammed the system before I started decrypting. Whilst I don't know if this is necessary, I figured that it made more sense to remove the ransomware software first than to leave it on, decrypt it, and then I don't know what could have possibly happened, but have something negative happen afterwards. So having done this, I managed to decrypt the system. The problem then became that the bespoke software didn't survive this process. Now, even if we had paid the ransom, I'd imagine that the same thing would have happened. We would have decrypted everything, and it still wouldn't have been functional afterwards, because it was running and it was open when the hard drive was encrypted, and every file on board the hard drive was encrypted. So I think that probably in part caused the problem, that system files or things like that might have been encrypted whilst they were running, which could have just completely fucked it up. And it was worse than that. Like the file itself just got completely, whether it was corrupted and just effectively deleted by the system or something else, I don't know. But it got completely wrecked. But the upside of this was that even though it had been completely wrecked, it means that we were then in the state where our IT guy then knew what to do, because this is the stuff that he understood. He could easily rebuild that. It would take him time, but he could rebuild it from that state. And because it was decrypted, the image files and things like that were saved, and that means that potentially a month of work to get us back in track turned into a couple of days of work. All in all, we probably lost about 24 hours, maybe a little bit more of data, but because of the nature of the business, it was very easy to piece together the data that we lost in terms of the database, and restoring sort of back to workable levels. All in all, it took about 4 hours of my work, and then hours and hours again of the IT guy's work as well, to get this back on track. And there's still more work to be done in just calling customers who had a bit of disruption in those terms and getting things sorted back out. But it's better than the alternative, which would have been effectively just having to format the hard drive or pay a ransom, neither of which are particularly appealing prospects. Interestingly, my boss was at the point where they're like, why don't we just pay? We could just pay. At that point, however, I'd already said to them, look, do you want me to try and fix this? And I'd already started, so there was no real point when they got to that point where they had decided that maybe, sorry, it's starting to hammer it down. right now, but oh well. But yeah, it already got into the point where we had already lost. We'd already had this happen. Um, the things I learned really from this is that obviously don't open fucking attachments, but it's not. Sometimes it's not enough to just not open attachments, because I'm 23 now. I've been using computers since I was about 5, possibly younger, and for me, that's obvious. But my colleague is 30 something, and just that little bit less, experience with computers probably is the difference maker in this. The other thing is that I think it's quite important. I'm just going to close this window. Ooh. Just that little bit difference of experience that meant for one moment my colleague looked at this FedEx email and thought, oh yeah, that's legitimate, and it was only for probably 20 seconds that it fooled them, but that 20 seconds was enough. It's the same principle that works in any kind of link-based scam or anything like that, where very quickly it can escalate wrong if you just suspend your disbelief for 20 seconds. Then people can do some fairly nasty things. The other thing I think is that I see a lot people claim that system images are redundant, that you don't need X, Y, or Z. But in that situation, if we'd had a system image from the day before, then we could have just restored, and we would have lost that morning's work, but we lost that anyway, and we lost the day before as well. Whereas if we had a system image from the day before, the night before, then we could have very quickly restored back to that point, and we would have been fine. We wouldn't have lost what effectively worked out as 3 shifts of data, because that's effectively what happened, is that the time it took to get it back online, another shift occurred, and we lost that shift's worth of data too, because we lost in part that shift's worth of data, and we had to rebuild it. So it's a difficult situation, and it's very difficult to know what to do in that situation. But I think it does crystallize for me that full system images have their purpose, and especially in a small business where we probably could find some software. Like, again, I've been trying to do some research on this, and if you can recommend anything that does automated full system images, to a backup location over a network, that would be great, because seriously, it's dense reading, but that's what I'm looking for at the moment, because I think that would be the best solution, is to have an automated thing. Because for example, it would mean that we'd have to leave computers on, but the cost in electrical terms of leaving a computer on overnight is minor compared to possibly losing all of that data. Simply in terms of paying the staff extra money to stay behind and fix these problems, which is what the business ended up having to do. So again, like I said before, this isn't like a guide on what to do if you get infected by ransomware. That is a choice that people have to make, and it does depend on what happens. What I will say is that the reason why we had such a big problem with it is because our backups were probably inadequate, in my opinion. We should have been doing more to back up, and B, because the data that we lost, B, because the software that we use is so bespoke and it reacted badly. If you use much better programmed and much more standard software, I don't think it would have been so time consuming and problematic. And that's why I was just annoyed after it happened, because there wasn't really much more that could have been done, but at the same time, it would have been nice if we could have found something else to do with it to make it that bit easier and that bit better. But yeah, this has been just a quick sort of recount of what happened. If you yourself were to get infected with ransomware, what would you do? How would you deal with it? Because it's fairly. It seems to me that there are decryptors out there for a lot of the more common ransomwares, and even when newer ones come into play, it seems that very quickly people start building decryptors for them. So, I would just say, it isn't. A lot of ransomware makers will tell you that if you have ransomware on your phone, on your computer, that it's a hopeless cause. And quite clearly it isn't. There are lots of things you can do about it, and just because it fucked up our business flow doesn't mean that another business would suffer the same problem. I would generally say that that this is something that people can deal with. They just need to then do their research. And yeah, but that's all I really have to say. Thanks for watching. Bye.